Okay, our first reader of the day is going to be Sandra Gilbert, a celebrated feminist critic and poet. She is a deep friend of the Flash. Among her many awards and honors, she was the most recent Cody's Award winner for Lifetime Achievement from the Northern California Book Reviewers Association. And she is going to hit the spiritual tuning fork for this 25th watershed. She's going to give the invocation, which will be her poem, Climate Change, from her most recent poetry book, appropriately enough titled Judgment Day. So let's zoom in on Sandra Gilbert.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm not muted, am I?
We can hear you.
You can hear me. All right, thank you. I'm just going to read one poem. I'm so honored to be here. I mean, this is really a major honor, and I'm grateful to Joyce and Richard, as always, for their encouragement and their sponsorship. The one poem that I'm going to read is called Climate Change 2017, and it's about the fires that burst out when the temperature went up to over 100 all over California. At that time, I was rereading Paradise Lost, so that should account for the Milton references. I was thinking a lot about Paradise Lost, and in the poem, I guess I'm thinking that what we had done when Eve ate the forbidden fruit was the same thing as what we have done in devouring the earth in terrible ways, and that this fire was a kind of sign of that we had done something, as we know, that was wrong. I have to change my glasses in order to see the poem and not see the screen. Climate Change, California, 2017. The heat is a snake coiling around us, rising in ripples and glittery spirals. No ordinary worm-like thing, but Milton's serpent, pile on pile of oily coils, strangling the roses, slithering through breezes, bloating the stove. Yes, Milton didn't say so, but even that mystery fruit was rotting in the heat the snake gave off. And as for Eve's dim cloud of fragrance, it was more like smoke, as the garden itself slowly began to wither into the cindery plot that would sooner or later be our lot, at least right now, right here, where the long tongue of the wind is black with ash and licks the vineyards into cinders, while the fearful plunge into pools of smoke and die with deserts in their throats. 1,000 atoms couldn't kill the flames. 1,000 Eves couldn't pluck a single rose from the dust. And a particulate cloud turns a setting sun into the reproachful, blood-flushed orange eye of what we thought was God. Though today, just miles from the snaking flames, a few new acorns are tumbling across the leafy road, as if trying to figure out what to do next, how to make something good.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you. That is our poetry invocation for this amazing period that we've all been through and for the good we hope to do in the future. Now we have California Poets in the Schools. I'm so excited with Maureen, Hurley, and Brennan Frisco and other poet teachers. Take it away, Maureen.
Thank you, Joyce. So much excitement here doing our first virtual poetry reading. I would like to open with an invocation from our U.S. poet laureate, Joy Harjo, who you saw many photos of her in the extraordinary slideshow of Watershed. She wrote, "Poetry is a tool for disruption and creation and is necessary for generations of humans to know who they are and who they are becoming in the wave map of history. Without poetry, we lose our way." Joy Harjo. And she is now currently serving her third term for the U.S. Poet Laureate. And certainly through California Poets in the Schools, we have represented poetry for the nation. My name is Maureen Hurley, and I'm an area coordinator for California Poets in the Schools for Alameda County. And I have poets from across California with their students reading. And since we do have time that is short, I'm going to read my student poems last. And I'd like to begin with Brennan Frisco and then followed by Jackie Hellerberg.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brennan Frisco. I am an area coordinator for Contra Costa County with California Poets in the Schools. I am a poet and a teacher and an editor and like 9 other things because we are paying rent in the Bay Area. So it is a 14-job gig. I have with me a collection that we put together through the community grant at Emeryville, which is called The Pencil Writes a Dream, which is a title pulled from one of my students' poems. And this poet is, at the time of publication, was a 6th grader. Her name is Lois Zerai, and this poem is called On Confidence. Like touching a post, but it's like a hand. Unlike New York, this place is full of chirps and beautiful hellos. It follows at your brightest, invisible at your darkest. It's the warm bath at the end of the day, soothing. No need for dismay, shatters when it comes across something like a tyrant, a dangerously beautiful rose with thorns. Would you dare touch them? Some time back, I would have, even now, but at least I'd know how to handle them. But like a good dream, I'd forget. It's fine. At the end of the day, you're the one standing beneath the streetlight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Now you're going to be reading one?
I just brought the one. I knew we'd be short on time, but
All
I'm
right.
happy to read another if need be.
Later. Okay, so next up is Jackie from Sonoma County.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jackie Hellerberg, and I'm a Sonoma County poet teacher and also a board member for CalPoets. I'm going to read 2 student poems. They were published in our anthology, and The first poem is by a student who was under the direction of Phyllis Meshlem. Phyllis is our current poet laureate in Sonoma County, and I'm reading one of her students' poems. The student is named Ava Ferguson, and she was a 6th grader at the time she wrote this poem. It's called Smoke of the Wind. I see a fox approaching me. Its fur looks black, blows in the wind. It no longer smells like lavender, but a smoky smell. I can sense the pain in its eyes of watching its home burn to the ground and how this fox protects me now. It's my turn. I suddenly get bombarded with visions of people trying to start more of the things that caused my fox to have pain and smell like smoke. I know what I have to do. As I realize this, its pain fades, never completely, but enough so I can see a sparkle. As it fades into the shadows, the smoky smell catches the wind and it makes me sad. But that lavender smell will come back. Its eyes will go back to that bright blue and its fur to silver, no longer covered in the ashes of its home. No longer covered in the ashes of its home. And the second poem I'll read is by one of my students. His name is Leandro German, and he was in 6th grade at Roseland Elementary School when he wrote this poem. It's called The Abundant World. I am a hyena of light that hunts down what keeps you up at night. I am a lotus flower that hides its fragrance. I will show myself only if you have patience. I am the cool drizzle on a hot sunny day. I am a star next to the moonlight to reflect your beauty. I am the creek gone silent so I can hear you. I am your guardian angel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Next up, we have Fernando Salinas, all the way from Ventura County, with 3 students who are extraordinary, and I hope he will talk a little bit more about them.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. As Mo mentioned, I'm Fernando Albert Salinas. I'm the area coordinator for Ventura County, and I'm also on the board of directors. I'm just going to introduce each reader one at a time and give you a little bit of background about them. I met Vincent at Oxnard High School many years ago, and he's just developed his poetry over the years. He is the first Spit Shine publishing word alchemist. So as soon as we finish publishing Genesis and Angelina's book, we'll be publishing a book of Vincent's. So enjoy.
Hello. So I wrote a new poem for this as best as I could. It's called Mama's Crisis. Here it goes. Dear Mama, I'm sorry to say, but I heard those screams from the other day. I'm sorry I didn't mean to put those crow's feet on your face. I see the way they drag your eyes. I see the ways they shoot into the air, the way they turn your blue eyes gray. I was busy, too busy chasing green, and I didn't notice that you were here living in pain and misery. I heard that your food goes too soon, that your house keeps burning down. I should have done more in one day with you so I could have another year to live and embrace you. But the greediness did get to me. And now, as you olden, I see the veins you have. It's like a watershed that separate the rags within your body, the one that used to shine with life. And now you are pale and your brightness is fading like the time from day to night. Mama, I am sorry. I didn't meant for this to happen. And now, because of me, my brethren and my sisters, We see the effects. We should have listened. Those stories you told us when we were young about how one action can cause a whole nother generation to suffer. I'm now listening. Do I have time? Tell me now. Will you forgive me? What can I do to pay my debt within this world for you? You gave me air, and in return, I am giving you a slow and shattering death. That this doesn't hurt you. It hurts me too. I am sorry, Mother Nature. How's it?
Thank you, Vincent. That was well done. Up next, we have Genesis Perez, the 2019-2020 Ventura County Youth Poet Laureate. Enjoy.
So today I have a pastiche using words from the information page about the Olympic National Park, which is just a beautiful green place. And it's called When I Stole from Olympus. Born lush, spectacular, primeval. Lower rain stretched, little remain. Protected, isolated. Lots of it storms, every year, seldom growing, festoon feel. Dormant, nurse decaying. Dead, die, fall, decay. Long death for canopy. River valley. All explore verdant. Growing story sword lady.
And to close for Ventura County, thank you, Genesis, that's phenomenal. To close for Ventura County, we have Angelina Leanos, who is not only the current Youth Poet Laureate, but also a California Poets in the Schools board member. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, I'm Angelina Leanos, and today I have two poems for you. The second is pretty short, so I know we're short on time, but I wanted to share both of them. So this first one is inspired by a poet, Natalie Diaz, who uses a lot of natural elements in her poems. So this is titled, The Earth is Also Alive. And forgive me if you hear background noise, I'm currently outside. They say that water is a body, but forget that the earth is one too. Her heartbeat is too often mistaken for the sounds of cars and sirens. But at night, if you listen closely, you'll hear it beating earnestly like a wave of 2 a.m. nostalgia. Only when we sleep is the earth at peace. I've known her since I was a child, playing in the strawberry fields where my grandparents once spent hours bending their backs just to lift up their children. I was always taught to respect both of my mothers, though Mother Earth never speaks in words. She speaks through the rumbles of her belly and the whispers from her cherry red lips. Every gust, a hush. Every tide, a lullaby. Listen when she calls you to embrace her. Soak in every inch of nature's beauty, the fields, her rib cage, every strawberry, a blood cell, growing in abundance to fuel her corazón. We are not the only ones fit to live in this universe. La Madre Tierra también tiene cuerpo. And too often she is ignored by us when we turn to our phones instead of out the window and dig into our meals instead of into our gardens. We must look out for the signs when she cries for us. After all, la Madre Tierra no habla con palabras. So I hope you know that while you dance in the rain, she is only trying to make you aware of her pain. And so the second very short poem is titled Winter Burns and is inspired by all the fires that we see in winter. Ashes fall as often as tears do here, and we see smoke sooner than we see snow. Just like me and you, the earth suffers too, crumbling under the weight of other people's demands. Our pollution sets it ablaze, so the earth drowns in tears, praying we'll make things better. We just can't ignore climate change anymore. After all, it shouldn't be normal to say that while spring rains, winter burns. Thank you.
Yes. I'm muted even though I'm unmuted. Still unmuted. No, I'm not. Thank you so much, Angelina, Genesis, and Vincent. That was fantastic from Ventura County. I'd like to leap ahead and include Sophia Dolan and her student if possible, just because we're worried a little bit about time. So Sophie, are you available?
I'm available.
Okay, jump right in, darling.
Thank you, Mo. Wonderful. So, hi, I'm Sophia Dolan. I have taught on and off for CalPoets for the last, I don't know, several years, and I always love Watershed and getting to hear what other people are doing, what other young people are doing. I'm excited to hear Maya Looney read. Maya is part of a class of 3 students that's been meeting for a couple years now, in a group that was started by John Oliver Simon. Maya is going to read, I just wanted to say before she starts that if you live in the North Oakland, South Berkeley area, you should start checking the little free libraries in the bougie neighborhoods, because we're gonna hide some zines in them by these students. So keep your eye out for that. And yeah, that's it. Take it away, Maya.
Hi, my name is Maya Looney. I'm a junior at Skyline and I live in Oakland. So I'll be reading my poem, Banks of Stormy Days. Banks of stormy days. It smells like mint and eucalyptus. Air combing through the hardwood grooves like a brush. Rain makes the room smell better, makes it sound like a distant church. There is nowhere to go but here and now, lying bug-like, lost state. The heater whispers pages off the floor like a draft. Pages of mine, of the atmospheres, it doesn't matter. Crickets chirp to the patter of droplets on the windows, on the screens. They tiptoe through the leaves, not trying to sing, trying to march. Water turns mud as the clouds grow thick. A cricket cracks a decomposing leaf. The trees hold their branches tighter. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Did you want to read 2 more?
Sure, yeah. The other poem I have prepared is called Premonitions. These unprecedented times, these unforeseen circumstances, as if we are all children lost in the magic of sparks, trapped a horizon away from the next second shore. We couldn't have seen this coming. But even children know not to let sparks grow in the grass. They aren't drawn like moths to the false moon, dancing blissfully in any light born of heat. Even children see flames as more than fire. These times have been unprecedented, but not because we cannot see. The oracle simply forgot to account for breathing. She forgot to listen for the crackle of wood turning to ash. Every time a whale rises to the ocean's surface, it's remembering, recalling the cool relief of its last breath as each new one it takes grows warmer. When we remember to breathe, it becomes conscious for a moment, a decision to survive. And then we are lost again in the sparks, too distracted by the chaos of their flight to remember what it is to not breathe and lie among the broken pavement and burning grass. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Maya. Thank you so much. I had also asked Greer to want another of Sophie's students to join us, but she didn't get back to us. It's been very challenging to get everyone queued up to do this process. So thank you so much for coming through, Maya. I know it was sort of the last minute. I really appreciate it. Also, next up will be Terry Marcus Gardner from San Joaquin Valley with her student. Are you ready, Terry? Hello? No, Terry?
I'm here.
Okay, speak up, man.
Thank you. Had to unmute. Well, it is my honor to introduce to you my student, Jana Yoon. Her poem is a reminder of the importance of celebrating how we connect with loved ones through nature to make wonderful memories, right? Jana won a silver award for this poem in the Scholastic Writing Competition. Take it away, Jana.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Jana Yoon, and my poem is titled Blackberries, and it is an homage to my grandmother's hands. There was a mountain that blossomed each summer behind my grandmother's house. It grew fields of corn, tomatoes, and every vegetable imaginable, but it also grew the most luscious blackberries you'd ever eaten. Every summer, my grandmother would take me to the mountain to pick the perfect summer berries, and we would bring home more blackberries than the entire village could eat. Holding my hand with an iron grip, as if I would fly away if not held, we would huddle up the mountain, my small feet stepping in her footsteps. Hidden between the tomatoes and the cucumbers, we would find an occasional bush of berries, a burst of purple and fields of red and green, sparkling in the sun like a crown jewel. I would stand beneath the bush, holding a woven basket nearly as big as myself, imagining it filled to the brim with delicious berries. My grandmother would pick each fruit quickly but carefully, her hands wrinkly but strong, expertly choosing only the ripest berries that would soon be washed until pristine. The kitchen, like the rest of the house, was small and old, lined with the flowery vanilla wallpaper. An aroma of soup always filled the kitchen air, offering a delicious meal, yet with nobody left to enjoy it. The sound of empty clutter, as my grandmother's skillful hands worked in the kitchen as soon as the sun rose, as she had since longer than any of us could remember. I felt the cold of the washberries against my hands as she poured them into a large glass bowl made of fine old china. She would place the bowl on the huge glass table, suited better for a parlor than my grandmother's small kitchen. A table once filled with family now sat in silence, only the sound of the two of us eating blackberries to be heard. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Jana. Thank you so much for joining us. Is Susie here yet? Susie Terrence? No? Blake, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm the poet. I'm the coordinator and a poet teacher in Mendocino County, and I'm going to read a poem by the student Dylan de Guzman, and it appeared in our book here, which is kind of washed out right now, called Heart of Bone, which was the anthology in 2017, and it was also in the Poets in the Schools, California Poets in the Schools anthology, which is Hope, Singing the Feathers of Freedom, and I'll put the links of where you get both these books in the chat. This is called Inauguration Poem. We are the children of earth. We are the children of Eden, sprouted up from the cherry blossoms. We are the children of Eden, rooting in the undergrowth of this culture. We are all beautiful. We are all a hopeful generation. America, are you listening? The children of Eden are crying for change, but not like this. Our faith was in equality. Our hope was in kindness. Our generosity was meant for all of you. We are the children of Eden, dying for justice for all. We are the children of Eden. Under one nation, we might fall. Give us your eyes, America, and we will show you our dying mother. We will show you our crucified brothers who lie with their bellies to the sky because you cut them down for the sake of progress. We are the children of Eden. We are the children of earth, and our hope is in you, America. Dylan de Guzman. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Blake. That was worth all the trouble trying to make this whole process work. Thank you so much. I hear rumor via messenger that Susie is here and she's available to join us via phone, which means we probably won't see her. Go ahead, Susie. Not hearing her. Okay, while
Susie, let me just tell her what to do. She needs to hit *6 on her phone to unmute herself.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you. Okay, wow, I'm unmuted. I'm wild. All right. This is a poem entitled Secrets by a 5th grader, Sophia Lee, from West Portal Elementary School. She wrote her poem, it was submitted and appeared in Molly Fisk's anthology. So it's called Secrets. The glistening white moon taught me how to sleep at night. The golden sun taught the world to rise during the bumpy dawn. The shaking forest has secrets to tell you. You are strong. Don't give up. You can make it through. That's it. I'll just read one because I know you're short on time.
Thank you, Susie. And Susie is the area coordinator for San Francisco County. I would like to read a poem by Muad Belhalfa, and it is from Molly Fisk's California Fire and Water Collection anthology from 2020. He is a 2nd or 3rd language learner. When he wrote this, he did not believe it was a poem, and he was terribly, terribly shocked to have it appear in print. Once I was the mist in the clouds. I was the one drop of rain, but now I am the storm, but now to fire, but now to smoke. And that was a 4th grader, Muad Belhafka, Cleveland Elementary School in Oakland, California. So my next question to Joyce is, we need to wrap it up, or can I read one more poem? No sound. I'm going to read one more, very short. And this is by Lilo Johansson, also from Cleveland Elementary School in Oakland. I am the ashes of the flames. From the wolf, I learned to howl like fire. For when the fire burns, then flames grow. The fox taught me to run like a waterfall. When I sleep, I dream of volcanoes and flames. Thank you all so much for joining us wait a minute, it says don't forget Jessica. I'm so sorry I leapt ahead. Jessica's going to close this out and with a poem by Amanda Gorman, who is a California Poets in the School student. Jessica, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much, Maureen, and thank you everyone and all the student poets, youth poets, big snaps. And I just want to say hi, big love, be safe out there. Thank you for having me. Yes, so I've had the pleasure of teaching Amanda through California Poets in the Schools. We had a 2-year residency with Beyond Baroque, and we had this amazing book. I don't know, you can see it's Beyond the Bell. Oh, here. That's Amanda back there, but let me take her off of my background just so I could show you. Sorry about that. Wanted to show her off, but we are all familiar with her now. But she's published here, and this is Breaking the Rules, the Beyond the Bell program that she was at Beyond Baroque. So I want to share a poem from that and then close with a poem that we published in our CalPoet anthology. So this is a poem of hers called Poetry Is. Poetry is your voice when you don't have one. Poetry is a song when there is no melody. It is the sea glass an old woman hangs above her porch. It is who you are when you don't know. Don't say poetry because it's not what it is at all. It is the mind, the soul, the spirit, when they can't be contained like the blazing sun against a plum sky, permanently imprinted behind her eyes. Say poetry because it is what it is. Poetry is the tear you didn't want to perch on your eyelid. Poetry is the pain that brings you relief. It is the waves in the ocean, the surface clear as glass, but the currents underneath hectic as your soul. Whisper poetry when it can't be understood. Love those who refuse things that can't be comprehended. It is the silver sun and the yellow moon. It is the black light and the bright dark. And when you are done, you will see poetry is nothing at all and anything you can think of, for it is everything in between. That's Amanda Gorman. And then I want to close on her poem that we published in the 2015 issue, My Mouth of the Galaxy, and it's available at the CalPoets. I can pop the link in there, but you can support the organization by grabbing an anthology. I think Jackie plugged in the latest issue, but definitely go grab a copy and enjoy some youth words. They're so, they call it woke. They are so woke and wise and teaching us all the time. So, you know, we definitely need to listen. And this is her poem called Sweet Embers. It's on page 28 if anyone has this book. Sweet Embers. All too soon there was a burning, a dry, warm wind of tables turning. It's a dark type of air you're heaving, full of smoke, hope, cry, and tough believing. The water won't raise us because there's no way to save us. Why am I at the stake? Love can't ever make this holy. And long ago, I smelled the ash, warning that a love so rash burns slowly. And yes, that's Amanda Gorman, our inaugural poet. And oh my goodness, and she's just a celebrity now, oh my gosh. But we're so honored that she was a student of California Poets in the Schools and was a part of our Los Angeles County family and out of LA and beyond Baroque in Venice. So big love to Amanda. We're very proud of you. Keep rising up, and everyone share your voice, share your stories, and don't ever stop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. And with that, that concludes our portion of Watershed, the 25th anniversary of, and our first virtual. Thank you so much for being here. And you're such a lovely audience, but don't go away. There's more. Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, all those wonderful student poets. Our next.
Here's Richard Silberg.
Oh, good. Talk.
Our next reader will be Devreaux Baker, who comes to us from the beautiful Mendocino coast up north. Her book is Hungry Ghosts. And for me, these poems are like momentous dreams in which the voice of the speaker braids veins out into nature variously with animals and rivers and oceans. But she's completely in touch with the real. She's right there. The title poem of Hungry Ghosts is about lynching, strange fruit, all too real. And the whole last third of the book is the BP disaster. One of the worst, of course, as we all know, one of the worst eco disasters. But she keeps hopeful. They're like prophetic. Let's hope they're prophetic, hopeful, gorgeous dreams. So let's give her a warm welcome, Devreaux Baker.
Thank you so much, Richard. And thank you, Joyce. It's another great event celebrating watershed poetry. I want to begin by reading a poem that actually celebrates the local rivers here. I find that every river seems to have a personality of its own. And so I decided, oh, well, gee, I wonder how I could write about a river and describe the way it tastes. Don't ask me why I chose to do this. I'm a poet. My mind went there. This is titled The Taste of Rivers. Open your mouth. I will pour the taste of rivers into you. Navarro, Albion, Big River, Little Salmon Creek. The sand you taste between your teeth is the aftertaste of river time, crossing and recrossing paths, like lifelines you cradle in the palm of your hand. The Albion tastes like moonlight and cattails. The Navarro tastes like wild sorrel and pine. Big River and Little Salmon Creek taste like huckleberries eaten at dawn. If you fall asleep by the side of a river, you become part of the flow from Earth's great aorta and share the dreams of salmon swimming home through the blue chambered heart of this land. And I want to read a poem that celebrates the redwoods here in Northern California. The redwoods that have been threatened time and again by industrial logging. And so here is redwood. Patient is a word they have perfected. Standing silent until wind from the north urges small moans out of their throats so they sway and sing. Sometimes in storms, they mimic whale song that rises from the coastal fog to drift in and out of our dreams. What is holy if not a redwood? Color of sunrise and sunset, color of old flames filled with ghosts of ancestors. Their lives are strung out like prayer beads shuffled between the mossy fingers of some 1,000-year-old forest monk. They stand in groves surrounding the remains of ancient ones cut down years ago. They rise straight up out of the lap of a mother or father tree. They push past bark beetles and squirrels hungry for the taste of new seedlings. They are survivors from the years of saw blades, spiked boots, lumber barons, fires, storms, droughts, and floods, filled with that desire that lives only in trees to rise up, touch heaven, break open green bristles in sky, breathe in and out, sharing their breath with the rest of us on the ground below. And I think for me, watershed also means the much larger picture of our connection. We are all connected. And what takes place on our watersheds affects all of us, land, animals, for forever. So this next poem I wrote is, I was trying to look at that idea of our connection with everything. It's titled Bear. This morning, a bear was knocking on my front door, eating the cat food and clawing at the window. This morning, a letter came saying someone's father, mother, brother, or sister had died. A bear was trying to get in the house, and my friend was diagnosed with cancer. The cat was hiding in the tree, and I was out of firewood. This morning, my neighbor's daughter ran away, and she called the police. Fires were raging on one side of the planet, and all the ice was melting on the other. This morning, a bear shoved his shoulder against the plate glass window, and the frame did a small shudder. My friend divorced his wife in Krakow at dusk because he met a girl selling donuts, and all my friends need hip or knee replacements. This morning, widows in India are being burned on their husbands' funeral pyres, and a bear is trying to make eye contact. People are overdosing on ecstasy at alarming rates. The car won't start, and the factory just shut down, so it doesn't matter anyway. In Krakow at dusk, the neighbor's daughter called to say she wasn't coming back, but it had nothing to do with donuts, and my walking partner had congestive heart failure. This morning, the war was ending in one place, simultaneously beginning in another, and childhood friends had become boring strangers. This morning, the knocking was insistent, and the water pipes on our street had frozen. A bear was just outside my bedroom window, and the cat was watching everything unfold from so high up, it would take a hook and ladder to get her down. This morning, a bear wanted to inhabit my house, and all our lifelines were getting tangled. There were polar bears lost on drifting floes and fish too toxic to eat. Whales were beaching themselves for no known reason. It was the year of the drone, and I was huddled with all my neighbors, runaway children, sunburned sea lions, lamenting widows in India, and war-ravaged families living in unpronounceable places, waiting for dawn to release us from hungry bears that roam in and out our homes. And does everyone remember when the frogs started disappearing? The frogs started disappearing. There was a lot of research going into it, like, going, okay, here's one more thing we have to look at. I wrote this poem in response to that. It's titled, What Happened to the Frogs? The color of old moss or new lichen, the color of wet bark, oak leaves. Frogs that once ringed the pond in the woods behind our neighbor's field are disappearing. Perhaps they're migrating. Perhaps they just couldn't take the sound of carpenters pounding nails. Those were the times the frogs used to call their own, when the sun was a bright-tipped rim rising across the watery fields, and later when evening pulled the transparent disk of moon up into her lap, then dropped a reflection of her round face like a golden coin drifting on the surface of pond water. Sometimes you joined them at the edge of the marsh to play your flute, and they listened to those notes that came from one human intent on sharing his song. And then one by one, they joined in a chorus of voices that croaked and bellowed like an audience in Shakespeare's time, intent on letting the actors know how much they liked or didn't like the characters they were portraying. But now the marsh is gone, piled high with a mountain of yellow clay and bags of cement. And soon the pond will be filled, that kingdom of the frogs, sold and waiting to evolve into a shiny strip mall just because the realtor says such a special place with such a magical view needs to be shared. He doesn't care about the songs that frogs sing at dawn or dusk. He doesn't care about the venerable ages some frogs attain, how perfect the color of their skin blends with earth, how they like to celebrate rain and reflect on the face of the moon trapped in pond water, how they once listened to the song of your flute and then with raucous voices, joyful and exuberant, one by one, joined in. A celebration of water. Let me come back as water. Next time around, let me come back as water. The taste of salt marsh and blue tide on my tongue. Let my body become an estuary where birds winter over, the long rise and fall of my lungs, filled with wind from the Indian Ocean. Let me become an archipelago filled with the inward suck and mighty push of liquid that softens all things, that undoes man-made knots and translates longing into something physical. Let me be a stream that rushes headfirst to join the green body of an ocean seeking communion with sand. Or a snowy egret gliding her long bones at dawn over the valley wetlands. Let me come back as memory in the mudflats that echo sky and the prints of shy animals, or wings opening in the blue expanse of air, so I am lifted and held by the great nothingness that surrounds us all. Next time around, let me come back as water, etched with thunder, so autumn trees shake and scatter their leaves like 100 canaries, and I am set free in the mouth of some bright yellow storm. Was that my bell?
No.
I had one more poem, but I was just checking I don't know how long I've read.
Good.
They can't hear you.
Am I good to go for one more, or is that? Okay. I wanted to end with this poem because I know for me, sometimes when I am faced with climate change and think about, what can I do? What can I do as an individual faced with something like that? And I have to say, it can feel overwhelming and it can feel quite daunting. And I wanted to write something that takes that grief that sometimes goes along with those feelings and transforms it into hope. And so that's where this next poem comes from. And I actually got into imagining grief as this character that kind of moved into my house and was everywhere, and I couldn't get rid of her. Breathing water, swimming air. Sometimes grief arrives as unexpectedly as a murmuration of birds wildly fluttering her hands. She is looking you in the eye, causing a rainstorm in your heart, while she mimics the exact speech of dusk against your wrists. She curls with you in sleep and imprints an ache of hip bones against your back. In the morning, she's brushing her teeth with your toothbrush. Her face, a galaxy of planets reflected in all your windows. She is standing in the middle of your kitchen, where light and wind conspire to ignite a fire in the middle years of your life. She has a 55 T-bird and wants you to drive. You don't know where you're going, but she hands you a map and traces her finger along trade routes that whisper sex, loss, birth, death. And so you drive until the road disappears into dust. Ghosts of deer drift an avalanche of despair across your field of vision, and this is where you pull the car over, to stand beneath a sky recreating itself every night in the mythos of stars, Cassiopeia, Orion's belt, Dog Star, until the loneliness of the planet rises through the bones of your feet like a tsunami of sorrow, cradling hopeful tenderness. You are afraid to move, certain you will frighten that shy animal of galactic dreams back into the pain of space. So you practice balancing grief and hope until something like a puzzle of miracles breaks apart inside you, and you are breathing water, swimming air, dragging all the lifelines of the planet tangled as one behind you. This is where you create water for the world with your own tears. Grief asks you to drive her back home again, but you decide to stay here. A storm is coming. You smell electricity in the air, taste a remembrance of hope. This is how things fall apart, but this is also how they are mended once again. You want to unroll a sleeping bag, become a living hieroglyph. You want to build a bonfire for the world to warm its hands. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, our next reader is Devreaux Baker. She's a former San Francisco laureate. Her new book is Kalithia's Daughter, and it's a book, it feels to me, of origins and relations. The title, Kalithhia's Daughter, as she says, comes from Cortez. Cortez took a mythical African Amazon and named California for her, Kalithia. And Devreaux begins in the epigraph to her book to say she is the daughter of Kalithia. And then she moves into her book. She starts out with the origins of stardust and speculation on alien beginnings for life on Earth. She moves to poems of love for her father and mother, her father from Barbados, and ultimately, of course, from Africa. She unifies with African music, not African music, African-American music, James Brown and the blues and all that gorgeous music. And her final union is love, through love, the origins and relations of love. So let's give her a a flutter of jazz hands, Devorah Major.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to see so many faces of so many people with and hear such lovely, wonderful poetry. It was just a beautiful opening with Steve Wilson's photography to remind me of the people that, well, I remember them often that I'm missing, but to see them again when they were vital. Anyway, and I'm going to start with Cosmology Meditation. We are the memory of that place without measure that filled all space that never was and ever will be. That place existing as the perfect note, yet making no sound, holding all colors inside a light that was nothing but darkness. We are the memory of a breath that could not be but was, a breath that swelled to bubble, that burst and then collapsed. We are the memory gestated in years that lasted eons as the universe womb birthed heat, light, rock, ice, mineral, song, us. We are the impossible made flesh, creating infinite possibilities of hope or endless chasms of despair inside the prayers which we have become. Earth memories, water, heat, color everywhere, wings, fur, flesh, roots, gossamer and rope, seed, sea, loam and sand, an infinite ability to birth, to heal, to kill, to die. The shape of wind, its sound. Wind, motion, touch, change. Wind sculpting life around twig, mountain, nape, sound, wave, sometimes captured, always released. No death, no birth, just change. This planted, that flattened, another smoothed or sharpened, a cutting chill, a thick, warm embrace. Wind strokes. This was a response to a quote by Yoko Ono. And what she said was, or wrote, "Whisper your dream to a cloud. Ask the cloud to remember it," which set me to thinking about what clouds are. In fact, clouds are heavy with tears and dirt, hovering above smog particulates, briefly carrying seagull feathers, dressed in colors they do not choose, moving only as the wind wane as much, moving only as the wind demands, weighing as much as 100 elephants. Let the clouds feed the jade tree, which blossoms in gratitude from those kisses. Let the clouds shelter the squabbling blue jays from the swelter of summer heat and melting tar. Let the clouds dress the mountaintops in undulating cloths of white and gray, now a hat, then a cloak. Let the clouds stay as clouds, while my dreams fly, always returning to settle in a crevice of my open heart. And here I was thinking really about the ocean. Actually, I once, as a child, got caught in, and besides learning about fear from my mother, I think I learned a lot about water and trusting water and understanding that one had to be humble in water. This is called Almost Drowning. 1. In the midst of it all, I know I must come up for air or quickly learn to breathe underwater. 2. Cresting ocean above my head, I hold back the gasp and open my mouth. Deeply swallow air in one huge gulp before descending again into the salted waters, to shoot up once more towards the sun, unfold, absorb, lay back, inhale, before again descending. 3. I dive lower than I can imagine. Looking above, I see a glimmer reflecting below the ocean's choppy surface. I cut the waves, break through for a moment, breathe as I let the waves return me to the shore. This next is actually about the seashore, but it was inspired actually by a painting of the Masada on the Dead Sea by Edward Lear. Serene this place where silver echoes atop warm sea waters, where cloistered hills grow silent. I want that quiet, that peace. And this next is called Mountain Echo, and it was also inspired by a painting by Jay DeFeo, whose work I love because she just kept doing a layer and another layer and another layer. And this is from her Mountain series. And I just sat in front of it, this was Mountain series number 2, just trying to become the mountain I'm quite in love with. Mountains, how they climb, and then there's the tree line, and this is actually about when you pass the tree line. Black lava crawls down my curves and ridges. White shivers against my bumpy walls. Silvery grays paint the sky and river icy. Treeless and strong, I push back the sky. And I'd like to end with this. Let me do the poem I wasn't going to do, but I will. If it shows itself to me. Stardust. Out of clay first, so 2 poems. This is the penultimate and then the last one. Out of clay they caution, dust to dust they intone. From earth you came and to earth you will return, they admonish. They remind us we are mortal and subject to death, yet insist on their eternals. Demons and angels, paradise or purgatory, merely human with a finite number of days. But we have exploded as novas, burned through countless galaxies, explored far reaches of the Milky Way, ridden on the tails of comets, danced on the edge of asteroids until in a dizzying frenzy of passion we fell through the viscous ozone, past cooling clouds to settle in the ooze feeding the ocean's floor. It was there that we decided to grow limbs and tongue, all the while holding inside the truth of our origins: magnesium, calcium, iron, copper. We are the stuff that stars are made of. It's a scientific fact, a cosmic truth. In ignorance and in knowing, we hold grains of the divine inside ourselves, and we always have. Which is why we are this place. We are this place. We are this place, the clay and salt of it, the river and sand of it. Fingers rise from desert dunes, faces emerge from cresting waves, bodies unfold like tropical blossoms flush with the odors of honey and decay. We are the forest we fell, the mountains we devour, the lands we poison. Our bodies are the seed and ash of this place. We are not merely the caretakers of this place. We are this place of gold and silt. And what will we do with this gift and depth? Where in prayer is the space for truth? When amidst these interminable wars is the table of compassion set? Even in our worm selves as we turn and spit, fertilizing the future with our waste. We are so much more than we imagine. We are spirit resilient, rock unforgiving, wind eternal. Let us move now from the storms of hate and fear and cleanse this place that is us. Sacrifice nothing but our arrogance and the need to destroy and subvert the glories of the universe that are us. We are more than we have imagined, more than we have invented and discovered inside our pulsing dreams. Sing with me of a better day when we learn this planet as ourselves. We are this place, shaping its tomorrows. We need to dream it well, full of the freshness of a newborn's eyes, dreaming the canopy of life. We are one breath pulsing, one heart beating within our infinite rhythms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Loved it.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was really lovely, Devora. And we are going to continue with Mark Arax. And Devora, fantastic. And Devreaux, before that, exquisite. Thank you. Mark Arax, who I hope is with us. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
Wonderful. You are this year's environmental speaker, and you have received many awards, but recently you received the 2020 Northern California Book Award in Nonfiction for The Dreamt Land, Chasing Water and Dust Across California. And you can get this book in the Watershed online bookshop. See the link in the chat box. The judges said, almonds, figs, walnuts, nectarines, pomegranates. The list of agricultural bounty goes on, and eventually it all comes down to water and the need for it. Concurrent with the depiction of the greed of the big farmers and their increasing need for water is the story of its depletion and of attempts to contain it in California. Mark Arax has accomplished an amazing feat in his chronicle of the land, where, as poet Richard Wilbur describes it, eyes become the sunlight and the hand is worthy of water, the dreamt land. Arax has an ability to mesh fact, historical accuracy, personal and recorded memoirs, and good old-fashioned narrative in telling the story of water, which is ultimately the story of California. We're so glad to have you with us here at Watershed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting a prose writer to be among poets. That's pretty special. So I'm going to do a little reading myself. I'll set it up by saying that we had a historic drought that came upon California in 2012, and about the second year into it, I thought I would go out into the land, everywhere from the border of Imperial to Mount Shasta, and try to chronicle this drought. It turned into really a book about the invention of California and the guile, the hubris, the vision of man, defying nature and the costs of that. I'd like to read from a chapter called Holy Water. And I want to dedicate this reading to a dear friend of mine who passed away before this book came out, was poet Lee Mccarthy. One winter day in 1998, a snow fell on the valley. Not a dusting, mind you, but an honest to goodness snow. My son Joseph was 7 years old, about the same age I was when it last snowed in Fresno. We were driving east on Shaw Avenue, watching big fat flakes make it all the way to the ground, awestruck. Then a startle jumped his face. Standing before us, brushed by the same white, was the giant blue of the Sierra Nevada. He knew we lived in a valley in the midst of mountains, but they'd been hidden behind a veil of dust, smoke, and smog for 8 months. Why are the mountains in the street? He asked me. He was literally correct. In the center of the road in front of us, the Sierra shot out of the ground like a piece of urban landscape. There was a shopping mall to our right and an automobile dealership to our left, and in between, the looming mountain. The miles of city and suburbia that rolled out to flat farmland, and the miles of flat farmland that rolled out to the foothills. They did not exist in our window. Only the mountain that made our valley, that put water in our river and water in our ditch and water in the earth below, stared back at us. I am thinking about that image now because right before me, rising straight out of the asphalt highway, 400 miles from home, is the conical peak of an ancient volcano that takes up the entirety of my window. Here I am, at last, in the embrace of Mount Shasta. How to tell you of its presence? It is not the mountain range of Middle California, but rather an eruption so severe that no mountain dares stand next to it. It stands alone. All great mountains deserve their own bard, and Mount Shasta has a beautiful, fabulous gadabout named Joaquin Miller, who arrived, like the rest of them, in 1850 and ended up a killer of Indians and a savior of Indians, a plunderer of earth and a planter of 10,000 trees, a liar and a poet, which may be another way of saying he was no better or worse at heart than any other Californian, caught in a time and place that was one thing one minute and something near its opposite the next, giving a man no choice but to change with it. There loomed Mount Shasta, Miller wrote, as lone as God, as white as a winter moon. He was born Cincinnatus Heiner Miller, and he was raised on his father's farm in Oregon and arrived here at the age of 16, drawn by the legend of bandit Joaquin Murrieta. He changed his name to Joaquin Miller, grew his curly hair long, and dressed like a vaquero with a sombrero, a red silken sash, and high-top boots. A devout Quaker, he joined a posse of white men who cornered a party of Wintu below Mount Shasta. As a matter of veneration, the Wintu would not ascend the mountain past its timberline. This, according to their legend, was where the good spirit dwelled inside a great wigwam with his people, the smoke and steam of their civilization venting from crater's top. In the massacre that ensued. Miller took an arrow to the side of his face that knocked out 2 of his teeth and left him with a scar that he covered up with a thick beard. Or so went the legend, or so went the tale, he told. It is impossible, he confided, to write with composure or evenness on this subject. Ages may roll by. We may build a city over every dead tribe's bones. We may bury the last Indian deep as the eternal gulf. But these records will remain and will rise up in testimony against us to the last day of our race. I'm standing at the base of the mountain on a late summer day as rivulets of snow melt bleed out of rock and fill up a small pool whose waters will join other pools and form the river that more than any other river created California. I'm joined by Buddhists and mystics and seekers of Mount Shasta's lizard people, clock people, spaceship people, and the myth of Lemuria, the last continent buried beneath the Pacific. As the legend goes, one of the Earth's cataclysms struck and left only a single refuge, Mount Shasta. For centuries, the ancient Lemurians, a people 7 feet tall, lived in a splendid golden city inside the mountain. Today's pilgrims are drawn by the mountain's vortical pull and the strange flying saucer cloud that hovers over the top of the crater. It is known as a lenticular cloud, and Mount Shasta is one of the few places in the world where it can be found in such dramatic form. What makes this cloud a phenomenon is a stream of air that condenses one edge and evaporates the other edge and travels at a speed of 50 to 100 miles an hour. Yet the cloud itself doesn't move. Gravity and buoyancy fight to a draw. The cloud absorbs sunrise and sunset, projecting such a spectacular glow that it's no wonder people ascribe otherworldliness to Mount Shasta. Those who abandoned their former lives and moved here for good come to the mountain base each day and reverently dip their jugs into some of the last pure water left in the West. I climb to a ledge above the pond and sink my cupped hands into the ice-cold snow melt and take a sip and another delicious sip. The man in a brown gown standing next to me calls it raw water and explains that it takes a half a century for snow on the shoulders of Mount Shasta to filter down through the volcanic aquifer and bleed out the base. If that is true, I'm drinking water nearly as old as I am, or far older if you consider the Pacific, whose moisture condensed into the storm that dropped the snow. Where water is pure, the industrial water bottlers with global reach aren't far behind. Nestle, Coca-Cola, and Danone have made friends in the 3 little towns that form a half circle around the mountain. They've made enemies too. Big city exiles who have moved to the communities of Weed, McLeod, and Mount Shasta. The imported environmentalists are fighting to prevent the bottlers from mining the pristine waters. The Wintu Nation, what's left of it anyway, fights beside them. 24 natural springs flow where the pine, fir, oak, and dogwood make a forest. Already, 1 spring has been tapped by Crystal Geyser. 1 million gallons a day are put into plastic bottles at the plant in Weed and shipped across the planet. Crystal Geyser is now eyeing a second spring. Environmentalists who blocked Nestle's water grab are now headed to court again to stop this grab. The cause polarizes mountain people. For more than a century, their towns were company towns devoted to the wholesale harvesting of forest trees. The old lumber barons built the community's pitched roof houses and high school. They built the swimming pool and the theater. When Abner Weed gave you a job, it was considered a job for life. Then the sawmills shuttered and the economy withered. The county of Siskiyou and the city of Weed thought themselves improvident for not acting on the one exportable natural resource still ripe for the taking. The out-of-town businessmen blew in their ears. Water is a commodity. Water is a mutual fund. Water is jobs. For the Wintu, the theft of their mountain snowmelt began not with the international water bottlers, but with the raising of Shasta Dam in 1945. At a town park where the river's headwaters gush forth many miles above the dam, several Wintu gather for a rally. Water is life, their sign reads. Their official statement mixes legend and legal brief. It goes like this. The Wintumen Wintu were born from the pristine waters of Mount Shasta and regard this water as a sacred relative, a living being that is being exploited, desecrated, and polluted when it is put in a plastic bottle and commoditized. Chief Kayleen Sisk, a regal woman whose long braid of black hair spills from her tribal skull cap, speaks of other thefts. There's Governor Brown's twin tunnels and legislation in Congress to raise Shasta Dam by another 19 feet. She says, we have lived on the banks of the McCloud River for thousands of years, and our culture is centered on the protection and careful, sustainable use of its salmon. These projects would only push the remaining salmon runs toward extinction and inundate our ancestral and sacred homeland. 60 miles below the headwaters, the dam already stands 602 feet high. Its imposition on the river's canyon is cruel and brilliant at once. The lake forming the state's largest reservoir is low now, even by drought stick, but not low enough to reveal the old copper mining town of Kennett, its bars, bordellos, and other houses of worship buried underwater for 3/4 of a century now. I follow the path of the Sacramento River, twisted one way by snowmelt and another way by irrigation for more than 300 miles, and arrive several hours later at the Delta, a place that is hardly what it was when John Sutter stepped foot in the Tules. Yet his wonder is not difficult to summon for this Fresno boy whose only river, the San Joaquin, is a dead one. For all its impingements, for all the failures of government to keep real estate developers from ravaging the marsh, the Sacramento flows steady and high between wider banks. Even crippled by sprawl and drought, it scoots past farms and towns and beneath old metal bridges, and the light it captures and throws off, and the air it grabs and cools makes the Delta a very different place than my Fresno. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was really prose poetry. It was wonderful.
I'm really honored to be here. I love what you guys are doing. I wish it was in person, but that's coming. I'm hopeful that that's coming. And those young poets in particular,
Jump in there, Richard.
what can you say? Yeah,
Okay, all right then.
thank you.
There is a real irony about this watershed, which we have been celebrating out in the beneath the blue sky, and instead we're all sitting around our screens and living rooms, and but at least we're together and the poetry is alive, and so we're cooking. Our next reader is our friend Ellery Akers, who is a lifelong naturalist. She's a visual artist as well as a poet. As Joyce said, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. You won't get the texture of it, but this year's you really can't see it, but this year's broadside is the first poem from her book, Swerve. And Ellery, her poetry for me is characterized as a signature intensity, which is not forced, and it doesn't keep her from being delicate. And she's got a wide angle view of things, but that doesn't keep her from zooming in to immediate details. And her new book is Swerve. And Lesions, this broadside, is the first poem in it, and it's divided into 3 sections, which is environmentalism first, then feminism, in which she celebrates women like Rachel Carson of Silent Spring. And finally, it ends in resistance. And get this book, you read this book, it makes you want to stand up and scream, we got to do something, we got to get down and do it, which is of course what Watershed is all about. So thank you so much. Let's give a flutter of jazz hands for Ellery Akers.
Thank you, Richard and Joyce, for all you do for poetry and Watershed. And this year, I have a lot more hope about climate than I did at last year. And I really believe we still have time. We're all late, but we still have time. So I'm going to read the first poem about having time. It's called Not Too Late. The blackberry leaves that turn silver when they flip over in the wind know there is still time. The charred trunks are still alive under the scorched bark. The corals have not been completely bleached. Newts still float languidly in the pond, and beetles who've always carried the sun on their backs carry the minutes. The mites are lugging the seconds over the cold grains of soil. Grasshoppers move toward us with their ears on their bellies, as if they were listening to the future. The cardinals are fluttering. The egrets are strutting toward us in their elegant way. They are bringing us platters of time and laying them down in front of us. The hawks carrying hours in their talons and letting them fall. The ocean with its clumps of foam delivering the weeks and months, and even the snakes curling around the strength of the time that is left. So this year, I'm going to be even more of an activist because I think this is such an important time and there's so much at stake. And the next poem is about a sad event and it carries my grief about the earth. It's about the death of starfish along the West Coast, and it's called Lesions. Whenever a species gets stubbed out like this, I feel the border of our lives is fraying. The map of the sea yanked blank in one corner. Sometimes I think we're holding the diameter of the earth in our hands, an elastic band stretched tight. And we're living in the years before it snaps back and tosses animals and trees and us away. Maybe we should write a letter to those people of the future. Here is the earth. Love it for us. It's hard to believe, but we loved it too. So that's a poem about my sadness about the earth, but the next poem is celebrating my love for the earth, and it's called What Nature Teaches Us. That it slows you down so you can hear the stream as it pours. It reminds you, you are in the body it made for you. The quiet in the deep ground reminds you, the rock gouged by wind. You can stand under a tree as it rests in its own frank love of itself. Rarely you see this in a man or woman, often in a tree. In the glare and heat, you can hear a garter snake slide across gravel. Your body likes to sit and watch the day moon, and you're surrounded by chlorophyll as it binds the sun in the leaves. And you sit under those leaves in the calm air, and your mind surrenders its locomotives, and you breathe. So one of the things that gives me hope is all the activists, and one of them is Stacey Abrams, who made such a difference. And the other one is Rachel Carson. So I'm going to read a poem about her. And you probably know this, but she was sick at the very end of her life, and she had heart trouble and cancer, and she almost went blind for 2 weeks, but she kept on writing Silent Spring. And it's heartbreaking if you read her journals, you see all these notes about pesticides. And then one cry from the heart in her different handwriting, how she wants to go to Maine, she's in so much pain, and then she goes right back to writing all these notes about pesticides. So here's the poem, Rachel Carson. I think of the way she bent over tide pools at night. A woman stooped in the dark with her flashlight, as if she were stepping into the lit harness of her work. I think of the way she lay under the stars because they were medicine. Tumors near the collarbone, pain in her spine, radiation, crepiosin, arthritis, iritis, sightless for weeks, listening as her friend read a draft out loud, remembering the robin that fell dead from a branch. I think of the pages of notes about pesticides. I moan inside and I wake in the night and cry out silently for Maine. And then more notes about pesticides. I think of the way the moon glazed the water when she crossed out words and wrote other words. I think of the way she knew eels slid from brook to brook and then to the sea. I'm in luck because brown is cheapest, she said, when she bought a wig to cover her bald head at the Senate. I could never again listen happily to a thrush song, she said, if I had not done all I could. They called her spinster, alarmist, communist. I think of the eagles who came back because of her. I think of her open gaze, her resolve, her refusal to turn away from the wreck. And because of her and her activism, we do have the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Endangered Species Act. It's amazing what one person can do. And the last poem I'm going to read is about climate change and power. And I think we all feel, and I feel too, so many times a sense of overwhelm and powerlessness. But Alice Walker has a really good thing to say about this. And I put an epigraph from her at the top of this poem. And what she says is the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And so this is a poem about hope in many ways. The starfish are returning to the West Coast. And even after these terrible destructive fires deep in the mountains, in the wilderness, there are species that are coming back and the forests are regenerating. So this poem is called, We Have the Power to Pull Back from the Brink. And so I stand here and call power. I stand here and call water. I call creeks, lakes, pools, sinkholes, tide pools with turban snails and starfish, the ones that have come back to the West Coast, climbing over rocks on white tube feet, resilient as nature can be resilient. I call shin bones of water skinning down into sluice boxes, brackish water, sulfur smelling water, sludge, rain in rain barrels, clear water spilling over dams, and clear water that has never been dammed. I confront the brink, even though I'm part of the brink. I call snow geese sifting onto the rice fields honking, white-fronted geese, brant. I call the shapes of leaves, spatulate, cordate, pinnate, lanceolate. I call the hole in the ozone, pollen, luciferin, chitin. I call rare plants and animals coming back because of the fire, fishers, black-backed woodpeckers, globe mallows, morels. I call fire. And fire answers with its flaming mouth and strange whining pronunciation as it clears the underbrush. And the hole in the ozone answers that it is closing. And the leaves answer. A 12-year-old boy planted 1,000,000 trees. And luciferin blinks on and off and illuminates what has been buried so long under tons of dark water. And pollen blows into the faces of climbers who hung all night in slings from the St. John's Bridge to stop shell drilling the Arctic. And water answers. Belize banned offshore oil and protected the second largest barrier reef in the ocean. And my power answers. I've always known my hand could have been a leaf. Hemoglobin and chlorophyll, almost the same, only one atom different. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellery. Yes, 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 yes. And thank you to the three wonderful poets who've read before. Our final reader for the day will be Jane Hirshfield. And Jane has been so generous. She's been such a dear friend. She's read at so many previous watersheds. She was up there looking beautiful in one of the pictures that was flipped through, whatever the computer word for it was. And her new book is called Ledger. And what the first thing that strikes me about this book is a term that I get from Viktor Shklovsky, the Russian critic, of defamiliarization. But I think this comes to Jane not through the Russian critics, who she very well has probably read, but through her lifelong practice of Buddhism, of seeing with clear eyes and seeing the wonder of strangeness here. There's so much of in her poetry of questioning and of wonder, basically. And at the same time, the book Ledger, the title of the book and the title poem, is an economic book. It's a book in which I'm not going to use the right economic terms, but you enter your debits and your credits, and it's a capital. There's one of the wonderful poems in the book, Capital, an essay in which she goes through capital. And most clearly in the last section of the book, we get to feel that the debt, here we've got it. We've got the debt. We've got to find some way to pay our debts to the earth that we're still, and our children will be living in. So let's give her a flutter of jazz hands, Jane Hirshfield.
Thank you so much. So I had an interesting few minutes there because my computer lost sound. Ellery's last poem I missed and the start of the introduction, and then it all came back. So let's hope it stays back. It's such a great honor to be able to be part of the 25th Watershed Festival. This is an extraordinary event. I've been at it many times before. The California poets and the students, the poets and the school students were extraordinary. My first job as a poet was with poets in the schools. So thank you. I'm going to be reading all poems that are environmentally related, all from Ledger. And I thought I'd start with one that speaks to Ellery's mention of poems that write letters to the future, because that is what this poem is doing. It is speaking into the future, which will judge us for how this time and what we do with it turn out. And I am very much hoping that the poem will be incomprehensible to the future, that the writing of it is part of its own irrelevance making. Let them not say. Let them not say we did not see it. We saw. Let them not say we did not hear it. We heard. Let them not say they did not taste it. We ate. We trembled. Let them not say it was not spoken, not written. We spoke. We witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say they did nothing. We did not enough. Let them say, as they must say something, a kerosene beauty. It burned. Let them say we warmed ourselves by it, read by its light, praised, and it burned. So, you know, to love the world is not such a terrible thing. To use the world up, that would be a terrible thing. So this next poem was published almost exactly by a few days off 4 years ago. Its title is On the Fifth Day. And well, it was written on the fifth day of the last administration, on the day that they took all information about climate change off the White House website and instructed every scientist who was in the employ of the federal government not to speak of their work to the public without prior authorization. As we now know, that was a harbinger of more and more and more such travesties to come. On the fifth day, the scientists who studied the rivers were forbidden to speak or to study the rivers. The scientists who studied the air were told not to speak of the air, and the ones who worked for the farmers were silenced, and the ones who worked for the bees. Someone from deep in the Badlands began posting facts. The facts were told not to speak and were taken away. The facts, surprised to be taken, were silent. Now it was only the rivers that spoke of the rivers, and only the wind that spoke of its bees, while the unpausing factual buds of the fruit trees continued to move toward their fruit. The silence spoke loudly of silence, and the rivers kept speaking of rivers, of boulders and air. Bound to gravity, earless and tongueless, the untested rivers kept speaking. Bus drivers, shelf stockers, code writers, machinists, accountants, lab techs, cellists kept speaking. They spoke the fifth day of silence. And I think a great many of the people who are listening today spent the last 4 years, as I did, speaking every day in some way, however we could manifest our wish for things to change their course. This next poem is a poem with a Latin title, Fecit. The word is being used as it was when a painter like Alfred Dürer would sign his painting A.D. Fecit. And it is the poem acknowledging my own complicity in the damage that the way we live now creates on the earth. I have, one of the things about the pandemic is I have not flown. And that means I have not been adding to the ever rising number that we all know so well from Bill McKibben's 350.org that has long passed. And those are the numbers that appear in this poem. So, Fecit. For a person in love, the air looks no different. For a person in grief, in this, my one lifetime, while reading, arguing, cherishing, washing, watching a video, sleeping, the numbers unseeably rise. 305 parts per million, 317 parts per million, 390, 400. Shin of high granite ticks snowless, the compound fracture. I who wrote this, like the old painters, sign this. J.H. Fecit. This book, as Richard was alluding to when I finally began to hear him again, is called Ledger because it is a book trying to take account of the unaccountable. And there are a lot of numbers in it, including in this next poem. As if hearing heavy furniture moved on the floor above us. As things grow rarer, they enter the ranges of counting. Remain this many Siberian tigers, that many African elephants, 300 red-legged egrets. We scrape from the world its tilt and meander of wonder, as if eating the last burned onions and carrots from a cast iron pan. Closing eyes to taste better the char of ordinary sweetness. Cataclysm. It begins subtly. The maple withdraws an inch from the birch tree. The porcupine wants nothing to do with the skink. Fish unschool, sheep unflock to separately graze. Clouds, meanwhile, declare to the sky they have nothing to do with the sky, which is not visible as they are, nor knows the trick of turning into infant tumbling pterodactyls. The turtles and moonlight, their long arrangement is over. As for the humans, let us not speak of the humans, let us speak of their language. The first person singular condemns the second person plural, for betrayals neither has words left to name. The fed consider the hungry and stay silent. So I hardly ever read this next very short poem, but I wanted to today. It is a poem that is both taking the very long view of the traveling of the tectonic plates of the earth, and also the very brief view at the end. O snail. Under the Svalbard ice cap, Carboniferous era coal seams. A good farmer rotates her crops. The crops don't complain. It's the fate of stalks and forests
to vanish. Last year's fires, Australia, Portugal, Greece. This, California. O snail, wrote Isa, climb Fuji slowly, slowly. We so want this moment to last. The earth is so beautiful, even diminished as it is so beautiful. Ledger. Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin is 3,592 measures. A voice kept far from feeling is heard as measured. What's wanted in desperate times are desperate measures. Pushkin's unfinished Onegin, 5,446 lines. No visible tears measure the pilot's grief as she lidars the height of an island, 5 feet, 50, its highest leaf. She logs the years, the weathers the tree has left. 1,000,000 fired clay bones, animal, human, set down in a field as protest, measure 400 yards long, 60 yards wide, weigh 112 tons. The length and weight and silence of the bereft. Bees do not question the sweetness of what sways beneath them. One measure of distance is meters, another is li. 10,000 li can be translated far. For the exiled, home can be translated then, translated scar. 1 liter of Polish vodka holds 12 pounds of potatoes. What we care about most, we call beyond measure. What matters most, we say, counts. Height now is treasure. On this scale of 1 to 10, where is 11? Ask all you wish, no 25th hour will be given. Measuring mounts, like some Western bar's mounted elk head, are cataloged, vanishing, unfinished heaven. So I will read just 2 more poems. This one, like the one you just heard, is a poem overtly driven by sound. It's in the Urdu form of the Ghazal, but it is an American Ghazal, so it is imperfect and elasticized in its use of the form. Basically, long-lined couplets, which in a strict form would each have their rhyme word be the same word repeating, but here open starts calling to other words. And in a strict Ghazal, you would have your own name in the last couplet, and I have all of our name differently in it instead. It takes its title from the famous piece of music that the French composer Messiaen wrote when he was a prisoner of war in World War II and invited to compose for the camp orchestra. Ghazal for the end of time. Break anything, a window, a pie crust, a glacier. It will break open. A voice cannot speak, cannot sing without lips, teeth, lamina propria coming open. Some breakage can barely be named, hardly be spoken. Rains stopped, roof said. Fires, forests, cities, cellars peeled open. Tears stopped, eyes said. An unhearable music fell instead from them, a clarinet stripped of its breathing, the cello abandoned. The violin grieving A hand too long empty held open, the imperial piano, its 89th, 90th, 91st strings unsummoned, unwoken. Watching, listening was like that, the low, wordless humming of being unwoven. Fish vanished, bees vanished, bats whitened, Arctic ice opened. Hands wanted more time. Hands thought we had time. Spending time's rivers, its meadows, its mountains, its instruments, tuning their silence, its deep mantle broken. Earth stumbled within and outside us. Orca, thistle, kestrel withheld their instruction. Rock said, burning ones, pry your own blindness open. Death said, now I too am orphan. And I will close with a shorter poem. No wind, no rain. No wind, no rain. The tree just fell, as a piece of fruit does. But no, not fruit, not ripe, not fell. It broke, it shattered. One cone's addition of resinous cell sap, one small-bodied bird arriving to tap for a beetle. It shattered. What word, what act was it we thought did not matter? Thank you very much.
That was wonderful. What a magnificent afternoon in poetry and for the earth. And thank you, Jane. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all of our wonderful readers, everyone who has joined us today. It means so much. Please look for these books in the in our online Watershed bookshop, and please look for that link. It'll be in our chat box, and it's bookshop.org/shop/watershed. And we have 2 events coming up tomorrow. The We Are Nature open reading is at 1 p.m. And then we have another reading, a magnificent reading. And at that reading, Bob Hass and Brenda Hillman and others will be joining us, 3 o'clock tomorrow. So check poetryflash.org and click on the Watershed banner. Thank you so much. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Joyce.